Coming at you after at least 20 seconds of hand washing, I'm RJ Balde, and it's time to hash it out. The TRICHOMES Hash It Out podcast features talks about trending cannabis topics. We also bring in industry insiders and influencers to discuss their point of view. Today, as a part of Convo 19, a special TRICHOMES series, I'll be talking to Tracy Ryan, CEO of CannaKids and of CKSoul, about how those in her community are reacting and adapting to the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. We'll also talk about how a life-threatening situation for her daughter inspired her to launch a medical cannabis company and a nonprofit dedicated to exploring the medical effects of marijuana on cancer and other diseases in children and adults. Without further ado, here is my guest, Tracy Ryan. So today I am joined by Tracy Ryan, founder of CannaKids, a medical cannabis oil and tincture company, as well as CKSoul and the Saving Sophie Foundation. Tracy has also done work in partnership with Cure Pharmaceutical, an innovative drug delivery technology and cannabinoid molecule development company, and the Technion Institute in Israel, who is leading the way in cannabis research for cancer. Tracy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
No problem. No problem. My first question for you. I hear that you are a self-proclaimed momcologist. Can you tell me what that is?
Sure, of course. Well, my little girl, Sophie, who is now 7.5 years old, was diagnosed with a brain tumor at just 8.5 months old, which was catastrophic for her dad and I. And it was very shortly after that, we got introduced to Ricky Lake and Abby Epstein, who were already filming the documentary. They'd just begun doing it, called Weed the People, that's now on Netflix, and they introduced us to cannabis oil. So through a very long journey with Sophie's tumor, which was 6 years in chemotherapy due to her having a low-grade tumor, which is very pesky. Chemo doesn't get rid of it. It just slows the growth, and eventually, the goal is for stabilization. So these journeys can be quite long. I spent 6 years navigating the oncological field, all while teaching myself everything that I could possibly learn about cannabis, because at a very, very, very early age, Sophie beginning cannabis at just 9 months old, I watched how this plant just did these miraculous things to her immunologically, and the healing that she was having, and the tumor shrinkage that she was seeing, and how it was mitigating side effects and stimulating her immune system. It was incredible what I was watching this plant do. So not only did I really immerse myself in the science behind chemotherapy and pharmaceuticals and what those were doing to my child, but I also took a very, very deep dive into the science behind cannabis. And, as you've mentioned in the past, I've worked with the Technion Institute, I've worked with Cure Pharmaceutical, and now we have our own research going on with Dr. Anahi Jewett, where we have studied both Sophie and 17 of our CannaKids patients with profound results in the field of immunology that we have patented and will soon be publishing to the journals. So I can pretty much go toe to toe with most doctors when it comes to my own child's care, and especially go toe to toe with doctors and scientists over cannabis. So that's where it comes from.
Now, how long after Sophie going through the life-threatening situation that she did go through, how long after that did you decide to launch CannaKids?
It was probably about a year in when we decided to start the company. We started the secret Facebook page about 6 months after her diagnosis. And it was kind of crazy how it started, because I'm still really good friends with some of the moms that actually helped me start the page. And it was started out as a group chat on Facebook. There was a gentleman who connected a bunch of us moms who were giving our kids cannabis undercover, if you will, because this was, 7 years ago, almost 7 years ago now, when it was very taboo, and it was legal in California, but it was still, people were still very scared to talk about it. So we created a Facebook group that you had to be invited to. You couldn't find it. It wasn't searchable. And we started inviting people from all over the world, and it just started to grow. And we began to really see this need for more guidance, because this was a plant that was still being looked at as only a recreational drug, that, they weren't touting the medical benefits that it truly had. A lot of it was being stifled and hidden from us, if you will. And we saw that there were so many patients that were so confused. They didn't understand how to take the oil. It's a very complex medicine. They didn't understand terpene science. They didn't even understand cannabinoid science. And that's what led us to start the actual company itself, so that we could bring not only information and guidance, but products that were lab tested from the day we opened the doors, over 5 years ago now. Also, along with nursing guidance, we give access to nurses that can do full medical intakes, that can look at the patient's side effects, the medications that they're taking, and any potential for drug-drug interaction, and devise a dosing protocol that they believe to be effective for what their condition is. And they'll also provide recommendations as to what products to use for that dosing protocol. They also help patients not get high unless it's an adult patient who's looking for a little bit of psychoactivity. So, as I always say, we like to get patients well, not high. And that's how it all began.
Well, not high. I love that. And
Yeah.
now, as a parent, I can imagine that must have been frightening for you to dive into something that had, at the time, much less scientific research behind it than it does now. How did you feel as a parent turning toward cannabis as a relief for Sophie?
Well, to that point, we originally completely dismissed it and thought it was absolutely ridiculous. And it wasn't until we met Ricky Lake and Abby Epstein that we're like, okay, if these women are getting behind it, Ricky's putting her name on it as a celebrity, and they're, investing their own money, there must be something more to this. So, it was first of all having information coming from people that we knew had done a lot of due diligence on this plant. They weren't just going to put a movie up without really believing that there was science behind it. We started digging into the science on our own, and Ricky and Abby helped us navigate that initially. And we just did our own research and started Googling everything that we could around the plant. And there was nothing that we could find that scared us, whereas chemotherapy scared us to death. We saw how toxic chemo was. And at the time, I knew nothing about pediatric cancer except for what you see on TV with St. Jude's and children who are very sick and bald with the hollow dark eyes. And that's, definitely what we didn't want for our child. And we really were so desperate to find anything that could help her on this journey that we were willing to take a hard look at what anybody put in front of us. Cannabis originally we dismissed, as I mentioned, until Ricky and Abby came along. But then when we started looking into it, we couldn't believe how much science was actually out there that long ago. That was, almost 7 years ago now. And to see the responses in animal models with glioblastomas, which is, a brain tumor, it's a very deadly brain tumor, whereas Sophie's on the very opposite end of the spectrum of that, but it's still a glio type of cell. We thought that there could be real potential. And we knew that the chemo was going to make her very, very, very sick. And we thought cannabis could have the potential to mitigate some of that. And boy, were we right. So thankfully that's, we jumped on board pretty quickly.
So Sophie's tumor is now, from what I understand, being studied and is growing in mice and is now being researched.
That's correct.
And there are, in addition, 16 more children currently enrolled and being studied in the same way?
It's actually children and adults. So we have
Children and adults.
all ages. Absolutely. Now, we don't have brain tumor samples from every single patient. We have brain tumor samples from another little girl who has a tumor much like Sophie's. And then she's actually been on chemotherapy for 18 years. And this little girl has not been able to get off. And that's the problem with these tumors, is the chemotherapy doesn't destroy them because they're slow growing, and chemo only attacks dividing cells, and these cells don't divide often. So the problem is disease is left behind in the brain. So some kids can be stable for several years and then it'll start growing again. Some kids can get stable pretty quickly and it never come back. And some kids can be on, chemotherapy like this little girl for 18 years. And then we also have the cystic fluid off of the brain of Julian Marley's daughter, Bob Marley's son, and Bob Marley's granddaughter, Kaveri, who unfortunately succumbed to an aggressive pediatric brain tumor last year. And we were able to get the fluid from her brain before she unfortunately passed away from this really awful disease. And through the study of Sophie and Kaveri specifically, Dr. Jewett has come up with a brain cancer therapeutic that has already gone through animal models and that we'll be publishing to the journals very soon and working towards getting that into human beings. And it's a non-toxic therapy. The other 16 patients were in all varying stages of disease and all different age groups. We had some patients that were originally terminal 4 and 5 years ago with no chance of survival who are still alive and well today. And one of which is cancer free. The other one has a low grade brainstem tumor, again, much like Sophie's, where the chemo doesn't get rid of it. So the tumor is still in the brainstem, but it's been stable. And she should have passed from this disease 4 years ago. So we studied their NK cells and took a look at their immune function, and we found the same in their immune function as we did with Sophie. Sophie's was still stronger than everybody else's. Sophie's immune functions 5 times better than that of any healthy adult Dr. Jewett has studied in her 30 years of research.
Wow.
And she was a 6-year-old kid on chemotherapy when she took her blood to look at her immune system with a brain tumor, which should not have been the case. Her immune function should have been very broken. What we came to learn was that Sophie actually has no natural killer cells in her brain at all. So there's something weird going on with her blood-brain barrier and a genetic defect. There's something that happened when she was in utero and her body was growing and developing. So that is what led us to the therapeutic that we're now hopeful will be a real treatment for patients with all different types of brain cancers. Then there were other patients who had just started chemotherapy who were not yet on cannabis, and other patients who were on Western medicine treatment who had already begun cannabis. So we looked at them prior to treatment, while on treatment, and after treatment, and we found the same thing. If they didn't have natural killer cells that were working because they weren't on cannabis, once they got on cannabis, their NK cell function returned. If they were taking cannabis alongside chemotherapy, their NK cell function looked unlike what it should when compared to all the other cancer patients that she'd studied over 30 years. And then again, the patients off of treatment, their NK cells were way stronger than any healthy adult walking the earth that science has tested.
Wow. And Sophie was diagnosed with her brain tumor at 8 weeks. Is that correct?
No, 8.5 months old.
8.5 months. I'm sorry, 8.5 months. And she is now 7?
She's now 7.5. Yeah.
She's now 7.5. And how's she doing now?
Oh my God, she's so healthy.
Yeah.
She is so healthy. It's incredible. She got off chemo. She took her last dose on October 23rd of last year. She is
I love it.
deliciously chunky. Beautiful. I mean, she's always had hair. She's never gone bald. Except for when she was a baby and they shaved her head because of a brain tumor surgery, and that's because they shaved her head. But she's never, her hair has thinned in the past, but she's never lost all of her hair. And she has just this long, super long, thick, illustrious hair. Her vision is getting vision back. So some of her vision is returning. And she's like in there. She just got off of a Skype magic show, and she's doing class at home every day during coronavirus. And she's loving life. I mean, she is so outgoing and still does public speaking engagements. And, before we were all on lockdown, she was traveling all over the country with me, getting on stage, sometimes in front of 1,000 people or more, and just eating it up. She just loves it. So
I love it.
Great. She's great. She's definitely, we definitely believe that God did this to us for a very specific reason. And I can't imagine Sophie being a better representation of what a true fighter and a true resilient warrior looks like. And we're just so proud of her.
Absolutely. And how is the family doing during all of this lockdown, self-quarantine, this crazy time? How are you guys all adapting?
We're adapting just fine. We've been quarantined so many times off and on over years.
Sure.
That, I mean, it's weird. Like you just kind of get used to being a homebody. I'm very much a homebody. It's funny because my sister's the complete opposite. We always talk about how she has a gypsy soul and she has to go out of town every weekend or go on some little adventure. And we're just happy being together and being at the house and, just spending time with each other. I've got more crafting bins than you can imagine because I'm Southern and I love to craft. So we're
yes, indeed.
Day. We have karaoke machines. My daughter and I are both taking singing lessons from School of Rock. So we're doing virtual singing lessons and we're doing virtual play dates and virtual, sessions like Zoom and Skype sessions with my friends all over the country. So I'm seeing my girlfriends now more than I ever have.
Wow. I love it.
So we're adjusting. It's nice. I'm getting to cook my family their breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day, which I've never really had the time to do because work is so tough. And so we're getting to sit down and have family meals together and, just talk about our lives. And we're doing our best to, we watch the news every day because it's necessary to understand what's going on in the world, but we're really trying to not watch it too much because it is so heartbreaking to watch what's going on. I cry at least once a day watching,
Mhm.
and it's like even hard to talk about it right now without getting choked up, watching these families lose loved ones and not being able to tell them goodbye, and knowing that as I'll be 45 in 8 days, and I'm a very, very healthy 45-year-old. But to know that I could get this and it could kill me, even as healthy as I am, is terrifying. To think that if I walk out and breathe the air outside of my apartment, it could be dangerous for myself and my family, especially after everything that we've just gone through. So it's really important to me to have these kinds of conversations like what we're having today, because we are watching cannabis stimulate the immune system. Now, I'm not going to say all cannabis is going to do what we saw our CannaKids products do, because there's a lot of cannabis. Not all cannabis is created equal. Not all hemp is created equal. And I have to be very, very um, strong in that statement, because there's a lot of products out there today, especially in the world of hemp, that have like an isolated, CBD and maybe a little bit of THC, and that's it. And the therapeutic value, we just don't believe that will be as good as a more whole plant approach to the medicine that we take when using CannaKids and soon to be our CKSoul line. But with what we are seeing in the research and with what we are seeing in the immune system, it's really important for listeners to know that consuming cannabis every day does have the potential to stimulate your immune system and your NK cell function. And the research that we are seeing right now come out of China is showing that there is a massive decrease in NK cell function in coronavirus patients. We're actually working right now to try and get some of the inactive virus into my scientist lab, because we believe that by stimulating the natural killer cells, that there could be potential to to do some damage against the virus, and to help people navigate it more effectively and more safely if their immune function isn't being completely destroyed. I was talking to my scientist yesterday on the phone, and she wants to write a commentary about it, in fact, because she's created what's called supercharged natural killer cells. And um, and what she believes she will find when she's able to get some of the inactive virus. And I say inactive because she doesn't have the level of lab that you need in order to bring in active viruses. You need what's called a BSL 3 and 4 lab, and these guys literally have to take showers before they even walk into the lab. And that's not how
Mhm.
her lab is currently set up. But by looking at the inactive virus, even, we can tell whether or not supercharging the natural killer cells and then throwing that at the virus could somewhat be beneficial. Now, if it is, that's going to take some time to get into the marketplace. But in the interim, we do know that cannabis is turning that NK cell function back on. This is patented research. So it is protected, and it is hopefully a week or two away from being published to the medical journals. And we are confident, and so is the university behind it, that this science will be accepted. So whereas it hasn't been accepted yet, and we do have to preface that. This is a lab where this is the world leader in the field of NK cells. She discovered the field. She is far more advanced in this field than anyone else in the world. And if she tells me that something has the potential to be beneficial, I feel it's important to share that message. Hence me saying potential, and
Mhm.
hence being very clear about the fact that we have not tried this in human beings yet against the virus, but we do plan on doing that, because we do want to do anything we can right now to help the world. And that's why I'm additionally excited to have CKSoul products hitting the street here in the next 2 weeks, because these formulas, we have taken just as much care in ensuring that there is a full cannabinoid profile and a full terpene profile. They're very, very, very similar to our CannaKids products that we use in our research. There's very, very small differences in the actual blends themselves. So, you know, I'm taking it every night. And I recommend everyone does too.
Sure. Now, speaking of CK Soul, I hear that's a bit of a. Are you going through a bit of a rebrand? And is that's launching the first week of this month? And is that correct?
Well, we're looking at probably the second week now,
Okay.
the third week, because of coronavirus slowing things down a bit. We were back to launch this week.
Yeah.
And we had about a 1 to 2 week holdup, but the products have already been packaged. They've already been made. We've just got to get them in the system, get them distributed, get the final exit testing in, and then we're on the shelves. And it's exciting. It's scary, because we're doing this right in the middle of a global pandemic. So, the world is a very different place in which to operate, but we are very excited to have this line coming out. Because The actual formulations are gorgeous. Super, super, super proud of them. I'm very picky about what goes into a medicine and that we then put on the shelf. So I believe these to have the potential to be very therapeutic. And we also want to reach a wider audience. My heart has always been with kids, hence the reason we call it CannaKids, but we work with just as many adults. And in this new legal environment, it is much more difficult to have a product that is only marketed towards children, because a lot of those parents, they don't have the disposable income that other people do, that are really just going for a health and wellness product. And a lot of these families have unfortunately had to go to the black market because they can't afford a 40 to 45% taxation. So we've lost even more of our core patient group. And we also just want people to know that we're here to service everyone. We're here to take care of the children. We're here to take care of the millennials. We're here to take care of patients my age, and especially the elderly as well, because they really, really, really need our protection right now. And I have a huge, huge, huge soft spot for children and the elderly. So it's exciting, and we hope people like what we have to present.
Now, tell me a bit about the nonprofit that you founded in Sophie's name and the work that you're doing through that.
Sure. Yeah, that's savingsophie.org, SOPHIE. Saving Sophie is a resource center. We started this at the same time that we started CannaKids many years ago. And we wanted patients to have a place where they could go get quality information that we had vetted. We take articles online and we shorten them so that it's easier to consume the information and really make the decision whether or not that's the kind of material you want to take a deeper dive into. We've got 8 different categories in there, everything from cannabis studies to cancer definitions to, nutrition and health and wellness, non-carcinogenic products for the home, charity advice, fundraising advice, and the such, or charities you can reach out to in fundraising advice. And we've also used that as a fundraising tool to try and raise money for the research that we're doing with Dr. Jewett so that we can advance the science much faster. And we also currently have a really cool thing going on with Lamo Shoes, which is LAMO. It's Lamo Footwear.
Oh,
And
sure.
they've got these beautiful, beautiful boots that are like UGG style boots and slippers that are amazing for the house. And they're giving us 20% of all the shoes that are bought that are under Sophie's section and on her category on the website to also go to the research. And we're going to be having some shoes come out really soon with these really cute tags that are on the back that have the Saving Sophie logo, but they also have Saving Sophie written in Braille, since Sophie has been compromised. Yeah, and she's not having to learn as much Braille now because she's getting some vision back, but she has learned Braille, and she still is working with Braille due to her vision being compromised from the brain tumor.
I'm looking at some photos of these slippers right now, and they look so comfy.
So nice. I mean,
I know.
they're literally just like Uggs.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh
obsessed
my
with.
goodness. I see that they have like some moccasin style shoes here too. And oh my God. No, these look great. These look
They have
really great.
girls as well, and young girls and young boys, which is great. So we're very proud of that relationship.
I love that. Now, you sit on the board of the Cannabis Consulting Group. You are also the vice chair of the Women's Grow LA chapter. And you have been a public speaker at medical cannabis and pediatric cancer events throughout the country. So, because of all that, what reactions to the coronavirus pandemic have you heard and seen from the medical marijuana community, many of whom may be, like you said, immunocompromised? And what actions are they taking to stay safe during all this?
Well, just one little quick fix on that. The Women's Grow chapter, unfortunately, isn't active anymore in West Hollywood, but uh, I was on that board for a very long time while we were active here in the city. So just one little segue there, so nobody gets me for misinformation.
Sure,
But
sure. Totally.
we're
Thank you.
yeah, no problem. We're absolutely seeing incredible response in the community, especially when it comes to people bringing their information online digitally. We're seeing a lot of conferences going digital. We're seeing a lot of COVID-19, Zoom opportunities where they're bringing on powerful speakers to talk about what's happening with the industry and how to navigate it, giving advice, helping push governmental issues forward. Because right now, as you may know, cannabis has been deemed necessary in many states across the nation, which really really helps us in this argument against the federal government about how cannabis is something that should be deemed medically available to patients all over the United States, and they really need to lower the restrictions around this. So we're really seeing a lot of support in those regards. We also ourselves want to start getting more involved in doing IGTV and Facebook
Oh,
Live,
sure. Yeah.
where some of the stuff we have that we're planning right now that we have in the works is bringing on other qualified medical professionals, other stakeholders in the industry, people that can give business advice, medical advice, bring on some nurses and doctors that are friends of mine. And then also, people that are in the brand world as well, that can really help us understand how to navigate what it is that we're all trying to run businesses right now. We're trying to keep our employees employed, because the last thing we do, we want to do is lay people off right now. So all of our employees are still getting a paycheck. We're, trying to figure out what is our distribution model going to be, since, the dispensaries are going to be much more challenging to go into. So we're, moving to more delivery services, and you're seeing a lot more of those pop up in order to support the community. And then, looking at federal loans and seeing if there's opportunity for people like us in the space because we white label, we work with manufacturers that take all of our formulations and white label our products. So are we even able to get these loans that they're offering to other businesses
Right.
across the country? And if we're
Hmm.
not, then that's a real problem, because, cannabis has been deemed necessary. And in order for us to be able to run these businesses, and knowing that we're going to see a great decrease in sales in certain products, especially the smokables, I feel are going to get hit with this being a really severe type of pneumonia. We need help as well. So how do we navigate that? And is there guidance out there that can help us understand from a legal standpoint whether or not we qualify for these loans? So you're seeing a lot of this happen, and really the world at large seems to be coming together more to support each other online digitally, because I know people are going crazy at home with nothing else to do.
Sure.
So,
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
there'll be some positive that comes from all of this is the prayer.
Now, just briefly, how would you describe how you think the federal government and the current administration has been handling this pandemic, whether that be in terms of the preparation prior to the virus hitting the United States, or the way they're currently trying to minimize the spread and mitigate the effects?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not anybody who knows me knows I'm not a fan of this president for
Sure.
many reasons. I'm not a fan of how long it took for them to take action. We are now the sickest country in the world for a reason, because things aren't being done the right way, in my opinion. We still have states right now that are not on a stay-at-home order, which is absolutely mind-boggling to me. There was a preacher in Florida that just got arrested because he had an entire his entire congregation show up at church with hundreds of people. I was just reading the other night about a choir group that had 60 of their 120 choir members show up, and now 45 of them have active symptoms. This was a few days ago. 8 of them were starting to show symptoms, and 2 of them were dead.
Oh
We're not
no.
doing enough at all. I mean, we don't have enough supply. We don't have enough ventilators. We don't have enough masks and gloves. One of my business partners on my pharma side has luckily been able to work with the White House to start importing millions of masks, working with FedEx to bring them into the country. They're manufacturing about 1 million a day, and
Hmm.
but that's still not enough. And you've got 30 and 40
Hmm.
year old ventilators, and if this continues and we don't get help for the hospitals, if we don't get more protection for our healthcare workers, I mean, we're watching nurses unfortunately take their own lives. We're watching doctors and nurses die from being on the front
Hmm.
line and having to leave families behind. It's devastating. It's sad. It's catastrophic, and more needs to be done. And we need to stop pretending that this is okay. I heard Trump on an interview last night say that he's a good news guy. He doesn't like to deliver bad news, and he wants to talk about the good news. And I'm just like, dear, are we in the twilight zone right now? You want to be the
Straight
good news
up.
guy? And it's just, for me, Like I said, I have done my best to stay off the news as much as possible. So I'm only speaking based on what I have personally witnessed. I've not immersed myself in the news all day, every day, because I just emotionally cannot handle it. But from what I have seen, I'm very disappointed. And to me, it seemed like he was more concerned about the election and what the economy was going to look like if people ended up quarantining than the lives of the American public. So, not real happy about it, to be honest.
He is loving his ratings for his press conferences too. Apparently, they're getting Bachelor type ratings, Tracy. So
that's all we need is to fuel the reality ego behind all of this.
right.
It's
I know
sad.
it is
Sad.
disheartening to see the lack of preparation that was provided for healthcare workers as well as all of us in this country. But I think it has been uplifting though to see how people in everyone's communities and with each other, although we have to be isolated physically to a certain extent, it has brought people together in terms of just watching out for one another and sharing what they have in terms of supplies because everyone is running low. And it has, in some sort of, I guess, ironic way, brought certain people closer together, which is reason for hope, I would say.
It is. And what we have watched over the years is we have watched the world divide us in every way they possibly can, from religion to politics to the color of our skin to the people we choose to love to what language we speak and what rules we follow. It is division, 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 division. And right now, we are just humans. And we are humans that are going through the same thing at the exact same time. And we're all scared and we're all struggling. And it is now, I like to look at this as the Great Awakening. I am a very spiritual person. I absolutely believe in God. I believe in spirit. I'm watching my daughter be healed, working with a spiritual healer that I've watched this woman do things that I've never known possible through God. Her name is Bobby Vogel, and I met her through Montel Williams books. This woman on his podcast on the regular. She was just on with them again today for like 2 hours. She's now, working with Maria Menounos, celebrity doctors that I put her in touch with from the TV show, The Doctors. She's not operating, but she's working in clinics, all over town with MDs because these MDs are seeing her truly use God to help heal. And it's unbelievable what I've watched her do with my own eyes. She's helping bring my daughter's vision back. And I've listened to, what she has gotten from God and from spirit. And I believe, because I've been touched since I was 11, I've too been, I'm no Bobby Vogel, but I feel things, and I sometimes know things that I shouldn't. And I believe that God is real and God exists. And I believe that this world needs a shakeup, and we need to be woken up. And I think that this is the big awakening. And if we can use this to come together, and if we can use this to love and support one another, and we can find ways to really wrap our arms around one another and slow down and start realizing that there is more to life than just the hustle and bustle and, money and fame and power, that there's the human connection, and that we're all the same on the inside, despite what we look like or what we sound like or who we love or what we do on the outside. We're all the same types of people. We're all human beings, and it's time to start treating each other as such. So I'm really hoping that this makes a great shift and change in the world that is for the positive.
Absolutely. The way I behave directly affects everyone else around me, and even those that aren't around me. So I am glad to hear that through all of this, you, your daughter, your family, your businesses are all remaining healthy. And I thank you so much for taking the time to sit and talk with me today, Tracy.
Of course, it was my pleasure. And thank you for helping us get this message out. Like I said, it's really important that people, not only take care of their minds and, their ability to stay sane right now, but cannabis can also be a really incredible tool in that, not only in reducing anxiety and stress and helping block nightmares, and as it does for PTSD war vets, but also stimulate the immune system. It's a very important medicine, I feel, for people to be consuming at this time. So thanks for helping us get that message to the people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Tracy Ryan, thank you so much again for joining me, and God bless. Stay healthy.
you. God bless you as well.
My thanks again to Tracy Ryan for joining me. If you are a member of the cannabis community and have a story you want to share with us, we would love to hear from you. You can reach the show at hashitout@trichomes.com. Please take a second to subscribe to the podcast and write a review. It really helps others find the show. You can also join the discussion with industry insiders and get your voice heard by joining the community at trichomes.com and following us on all social media. Hash It Out is produced by David Fortin and is presented by trichomes.com. I'm RJ Balde. Thanks for listening.